if we took the bone covering off the petrous portion, and I've got a bone, I'll bring one next week, I can show you that a surgeon's done it, and he's took the covering off the petrous portion, and that's where we find the vestibular reflex inside. So when you pull in the ear, you're actually affecting, to a degree, the facial nerve, the auditory nerve, and the vagus nerve can be affected from there. But also, you're restoring balance in the strained vestibular apparatus in response to an injury. So that makes the ear pull much more effective. And we also show some of the muscles around the eyes that we free off that allow better orientation of the eyes. So that's part of fixing that.
And the jaw fits in.
And then the jaw fits in with that, thank you. So the jaw muscle fits in with that, and the tongue is attached to that. And the tongue is a piece of facial tissue that is actually attached, and you can see this on dissections, all the way down, attached to the big toe. There's an attachment with the tongue and the big toe. And that's why in certain yoga disciplines, they position the toe while you're doing breathing, because that centers the orientating reflexes as well. So you can see that all the different disciplines all come into one hub from different spokes. But what we want to fix is, we're looking at more at the hub as a speciality. Hope that helps. So that's the eyes, that's that. Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah, they're moving.
Yeah. So that's basically the mechanism. So when people say to me sometimes, why do you start at the feet? Because this subtalar joint, that's the joint just below the tibia, and this bone on the outside is called the fibula. And this model, it's a little bit old and dilapidated because the strings are starting to stretch now. But basically it shows two actions of the foot. It should be going into a much better eversion and inversion. So basically it moves down like that and up like that. But also as we walk, the foot does a straight up and down, which is called dorsiflexion, plantar flexion. But it also has to be able to rotate around like that and inwards like that to make the movements of adaptation, walking on different surfaces and adapting to different things like a boat moving. So when we get injured, the messages from the subtalar joint make adaptations, and one of the biggest things it causes in this joint is a restriction of that movement. So one of the first things we check is, what's the movement like at the back of what we call the Achilles tendon? Now the Achilles tendon is also called the tendon guard reflex, and that means it's guarding the body against misalignments and informing the brain all the time of these changes as part of this subtalar joint mechanism. And then we've got nociceptors, which are the finest nerve endings, send a message to the brain. If there's an injury, it floods the brain with these messages and blocks that pathway, which then causes confusion in the body, which we call switching. And once the body's switched, that's an adaptation that then causes problems. And a lot of people fix the problem, they don't even fix the switch. And we go behind that, we're fixing the reason why it's switched by understanding the vulnerable places of the body that become strained when those messages cause switching and clearing them. So when you do a very simple technique that we showed last week of putting your finger and your thumb on either side of those bones at the bottom of the joint, and one's on the bladder channel, that you don't need to know the channel numbers at this stage, and the other's on the kidney channel, I found that the manipulations that I had to do to right the foot mechanism suddenly normalised if I put pressure on them, stop the nociceptive message to the brain by distracting the heel slightly. That switches the messages off, so it's no longer weight bearing. It was then able for me to take the foot through the full unrestricted motion that was restricted prior to touching them, and that would have took before a fair bit of foot management.